I was struck with the profoundness of what you said about God breathing in through the nostrils. And then if Tiferet is also the potential, so the heart and the lungs, the combination, God breathes into us relating to the lungs and the heart, giving us the potential for all
that we are capable
It's
of.
profound, and
Yeah.
it ties into what you just said. It's
Yeah.
No, this allows us to grow
awesome,
beyond
all
ourselves.
Yes.
filling.
Yeah.
Of this allows us.
All of this is
allows
allowing us,
to
it's
even have
freeing
an
ourselves
idea
to
of it.
grow beyond ourselves.
The only
Okay,
thing I
so-
But that's the tip.
So,
We
Kavra,
have 3 more
if-
weeks to get to the bottom of the chart, so we
Yes.
have a choice.
Yeah.
If you take a look at the circles above there, so we have chesed, expansiveness, gevura,
Discipline.
a constrictiveness, a discipline, flowing into the bottom basin called Tiferet. So I'm just going to create a very simple kind of metaphor so you can wrap your hearts and minds around it. So imagine chesed as your hot water faucet is chesed, and gevura as your cold water faucet. And I know some people have
Yeah.
some have challenges. Some have challenges.
It has to come to a balance.
Blending.
The energy coming out of chesed is hot water. Gevura cools it down because you don't want to scald yourself with too much chesed, right? And you don't want freezing cold water, exclusively gevuridic, right? What kind of bath you want to take is the temperature of the water should be perfect for you. And everyone is going to have a slightly different temperature that they call good. Comfortable. Everyone is going to be different.
That's a great analogy.
Correct? So you take your own chesed, your capacity for expansive love, and you take your own capacity of disciplining that, and we must engage ourselves in a very serious manner of manipulating the right and left faucet. So what comes out that flows into Tiferet is going to be as comfortable and as good as possible for us to live with. Okay? And we are capable, because of that free will, we are capable of controlling left and right. And the flow, once we get the balance correct, we find ourselves in a beautiful tub called Tiferet, where we have found the perfect balance between our capacities for chesed and control of that chesed, discipline within that chesed, that is going to culminate and conclude in the place of Tiferet, which is the place of beauty, because it is the place of balance. It is the comfortable place where extremism between chesed and gevura, right? Where extremism does not exist, rather harmony and balance exists. And from there we continue from that base, we continue living then into the realms of manifested Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. Okay? So we're talking about the inner stability of self is placed in Tiferet zone. If our Tiferet zone is erratic, in other words, if we switched on the hot water and we didn't balance it correctly, then that is what the mystics would call your Tiferet it's unstable. And if the bolt is unstable, what do you think the rest of the edifice, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut, if the foundation is a little like this, where do you think the rest are going to end up? In total chaos. In total chaos. So the Tiferet zone is essential for the rest to function effectively. So it turns out that the heart, the Tiferet zone, when it is at peace, when it is complete, when it is in balance, that Tiferet zone is the most magnificent director and expression of the soul. That's when our soul starts shining. Okay?
I have a question. So Rabbi, where does God come into all of this if we're saying to you, if you're saying to us that our Tiferet has to be totally in a balance, but it's not always up to us. We ask for help from God to create that.
Okay, I would just leave out the word totally, because we are striving for perfect balance, but we're going to get to it very soon. The essential part of Tiferet, that even though Tiferet means stability, right, between Chesed and Gevura, a stable kind of thing, that Tiferet never turns into Sadie or an angel. Tiferet is always moving. So don't, like total stability, just strike out the word total, because total stability would mean no movement.
I see.
So Tiferet is always moving. We are constantly shifting our hands on the right and left faucets because life itself, if an incident or circumstance comes to you where life offers you gevura, right? A whole lot of like power and discipline and this, and you need a little chesed to top off that excess of gevura. Then we have to start. Every moment of the day, we're kind of like shifting. So Tiferet is always moving.
Well,
It's
there's no
fluid.
There's no perfect balance.
It's fluid.
We can ask for help.
But Joni, my point is, within the movement of Tiferet, there is still a need and a striving for stability.
Right.
We don't want erratic movement within Tiferet. Tiferet is defined by harmony between chesed and gevura, and that is always moving, but it doesn't mean, what we're trying to prevent is too much of any one thing. If there's no movement in Tiferet, we're effectively dead, right? If there is too much movement, erratic movement, then we're not handling the faucets properly, and we are really off. We're going to find ourselves at the bottom of the chart. We're going to be off, totally off, because the bolt is not aligned. The whole Sphera chart is not aligned.
Right.
Okay? Does anyone have any? Okay, so
Don't ask.
so the Tiferet zone energizes and activates soul movement. Your Tiferet zone is going to be the determining factor of how much flow you are allowing your soul to have on you.
To express it.
How much flow
You know,
you are allowing your soul to have on
Tiferet, the stability in Tiferet is a lot like our sugar levels. Everyone wants your sugar level to kind of like be like this. With after a meal, it's going to go up a little bit, right? And then it's gonna ease out. But you basically want it like this with a few peaks, and then after 14 O. Henry bars, your sugar is going to spike up like that. That is when Tiferet. That is when you leave the world of Tiferet, and you have to go back to the faucets of Chesed and Gevura, right?
So those were your favorites?
Yeah. Okay, and as we discussed before, whenever the Torah, this is for your general use, whenever the Torah uses levavecha, which is a whole lot of times, in fact, I told you 1,000 times that the entire Torah is called Lev, right? The last letter of the Torah is a lamed, and the first letter is a vet, right? The first letter is a vet, and the last letter is a lamed, which spells lave. So the sages of the Talmud say the entire Torah, from beginning to end, is all about lave, is all about the heart, your heart place. And your heart place here is being defined as Tiferet. The entire Torah is a gift to us in order to reach this zone of Tiferet within our lives, the zone of envisionment, going beyond ourselves and finding purpose within ourselves and purpose in the entire creation. So every time the Torah uses the word lave, you can substitute the word Tiferet, that harmonious place.
Okay, so I have a question. So in that context of Tiferet, anything above that in the, tree of life, is it there just to support us or to give us a vision, or what is it
No.
there for?
Without those above, there is no Tiferet.
Right,
There is no Tiferet.
okay.
Those above, any sphera above any other sphera is always less tangible,
Right,
less imminent, and more transcendent than the one below it.
are we to?
So Chesed and Gevura are much more latent powers,
Mhm,
much more latent powers
mhm.
that once we grow it starts turning into channeled practical and tangible essences.
Yes.
The higher ones are always latent potential.
Is it good to have an idea that maybe one day we'll get there as well? Or we're there already?
We're not there already. There are levels of consciousness that we are capable of arriving at that kind of dispense with the lower levels and less imminent and more transcendent.
Mhm. Okay, I'll drop it now.
Okay,
Question,
yeah, Margaret.
why didn't you start at Malchut under Tree of Life? Where we met and what?
Because it leaves less room, much less room for imagination and a vastness of thought. If you start, if here's Malchut and here's, it's more important for us to open up the window of seeing the vastness of our position rather than beginning with the limitations and narrowness of the human condition.
Yeah, no, I see that.
The only advantage to starting there is we never get to Malchut Yesod Netzach.
Well, we live there
Even
already.
if we have extended the class twice. 20 minutes to, wrap it and take off,
So,
just saying.
So, Tiferet is also, if it's the heart place and the place of vision and purpose, it's also important to note that Tiferet is the location of what we might call passion, on all levels. Passion is going to be made manifest in different ways in the lower sfirot. We have a passion for food, a passion for survival, a passion for sex, a passion for a whole lot of things, right? So we're not going to get into it. But Tiferet is the center of where our passion, how strong our passions are. What makes a person want to climb Mount Everest?
the solitude, obviously.
Solitude.
People that are waiting in line to get to the top.
Not necessarily
They say it's
solitude.
because it's there.
The desire to live up to your potential and experience the challenge.
Absolutely. So forget all the technical reasons that a human being can have, but like Edmund Hillary,
Yes.
the first one, we can point to, you can use that as one out of an infinite amount of examples of it ostensibly, for the human being, what is ostensibly an impossible task, climbing Mount Everest for the first time, envisioning a modern state of Israel after 2,000 years. Just imagine Edmund Hillary and Mother Teresa attempting to go beyond oneself, and the passion of the Tiferet that it takes in order to go ahead with it, to say okay to it, to say I will conquer the impossible, right? I will do the impossible. The first one to run a mile in less than 3 minutes, right?
Apollo 11.
The passion, the inner human passion that it takes, is Tiferet at its best.
A vision.
But Rabbi, doesn't this idea have to be implanted in us? And where does that idea come from? It doesn't come from us.
Well, I'll tell. I'm coming to that next. I'm coming to that next.
Okay.
The mystics, all say with one voice that the human heart, the Tiferet place, innately and naturally longs for a higher world.
Yeah.
It is part of Tselem Elohim. It is part and parcel of being created in the image of God as manifested through this Tiferet zone, that the mystics unconditionally say it is not even our choice. We all have different capacities of this, but ultimately all human beings are created with a longing for a higher purpose. Some of us get to realize that purpose, some of us get to glimpse at that purpose, some of us get to live outside of a gaze here and a gaze there, an experience here and experience there. Some of us gain a stability of living on a rung of higher purpose all the time. That would be a definition of what we would call a tzaddik. A tzaddik is someone who, for the most part, not totally, not perfectly, but the tzaddik is one who has maintained a stable rung of consciousness that is constantly and perpetually envisioning, seeing, and breathing higher purpose, not fluctuating. On Yom Tov, on Yom Kippur, I feel like I have a higher purpose, but on a regular Tuesday, I'm a regular schlepper. Okay, so that's most people. The more enlightened ones are going to have succeeded in maintaining a higher vision, a fulfillment of that longing that is
Gandhi. Gandhi.
that is longing and has actually found their place and are living on that level of consciousness. Thank you, Donna, for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not being rude, I just.
No, that's lovely. You come for
It's a
what
different
you
purpose
can
now.
and you leave when you have to. Thank you. Yeah.
What you're saying is that Tiferet is the Exodus. Tiferet is where the Pharaoh, the ego, is downed. And the self, Moses, is going to part the Red Sea. It's gonna go through the lungs, it's gonna go through into the higher worlds. And it is going to live mostly in the higher worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the whole concept of the Exodus. It is that
Nice.
Pharaoh has
Nice.
been conquered.
Nice.
And it literally does happen like that it does part. Literally, the heart, the Tiferet, the energy center, actually does. One goes to the right, one hits the lungs.
Yes.
Right and left.
Yes.
Marsha
Nicely
and,
put.
Marsha and Margot actually were.
Nicely
Wow,
put.
look at those, the lungs, right and left.
Yes. Nicely put. Margot?
I keep it very simple. My thoughts that come are unique to me. They're not your thoughts, they're not your thoughts, they're mine. And when my thought doesn't go away, I consider it a God-planted thought, and I have to move on it through fear, through anxiety, and through reading with your help
Mm-hmm.
the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
That took me a year. And I thought, okay, I'm done now. But I wasn't. But it was the thoughts that are mine,
Yeah.
that elevate me.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Do you realize that if you would have concluded in your mind, if you would have said, okay, I've done it, that you would, that number one, your potential, you would have killed any future potential of yours. As soon as we say we're stable, we're done. Yeah, I know it. I know it all, and I'm done. That's the end. That's the end, and that is the end of our flow, and we are escaping from the place of potential to grow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
So
That-
So although we talk about Tiferet and creating balance and creating stability, life itself, we're allowed on this point, we're allowed to gaze in the Tiferet zone. We're allowed to gaze at higher worlds and higher visions of ourselves. However, in the Tiferet zone, we never, as I mentioned before, we never are allowed to stay in the same Tiferet zone. Tiferet is always moving. If the waters from Chesed and Gevura flowing into Tiferet, if those beautiful waters flow and the temperature is perfect for us, and we stop there, I'll use the analogy. What happens when you get into a bath that is absolutely perfect? What happens 20 minutes later?
It's
What happens 20 minutes later?
Changes.
It changes, and therefore we have to
Adjust.
start adjusting, or else we're gonna freeze. If we stay there longer without adjusting, you know what else is gonna happen to the Tiferet waters?
Wrinkles up.
What happens to stagnating water?
Smells.
It starts going bad. So, although we speak, it's a little paradoxical, although Tiferet really means stability, harmony, the harmonious state of being is still always moving. And it has to move, because it has to move forward into Netzach. That Tiferet has to move into Netzach, and Netzach into Hod, and Hod into Yesod, and Yesod then into Malchut. So it always has to be like that. So although we get glimpses of higher worlds and higher purposes and higher visions in the zone of Tiferet, we can't always, we are incapable of staying in that zone for a long time. Moments of high envisionment come, and then they don't only come and then go. They come and then they must go. They must go.
But they leave a residue.
Of course they leave a residue, and depending on the rest of the sphere, depending on what we do with that envisionment, with that gaze, with that bolt, depending on what we do, but we cannot stay in one of the aspects of higher vision and higher worlds is that they come and they must go, and then they come again. If we're good manipulating,
Why
if
must
we're
they go?
good, they must go because it's impossible for us to
Stay
to
there.
maintain and stay on a perpetual high, because then the high doesn't it's not high anymore.
But that's okay. Why not?
It has to go down in order to go
Duality.
back up.
We live in duality.
We live in duality.
But what is the definition?
When I sing the song, Lord, get me high, get me high, get me high. Lord, get me high, get me higher, higher and higher and higher and higher, higher and higher and higher. I'm talking about Tiferet, right? I want my higher vision, I want my higher purpose to, with a little help from the Lord, to be made manifest to me for a moment, so I can catch a glimpse of the higher thing. When I say, Lord, get me high, I don't mean high all to stay on that high, because then the high is not a high anymore.
But if there's no movement, I mean, then there's no mind. I mean, stagnation is a bad thing.
Then it's a pretty awful life. It's a pretty awful life. Yeah.
So you have to wake up.
So, and we don't have time actually for an answer, but I need to get the question off my chest at least. The people in this room we've acknowledged at some point in our lives this desire for a glimpse of something higher. We say that it's an awful life without some movement.
I would
No,
say, I have to correct myself, it's not an awful life, it's an awfully boring life, but go ahead.
Okay,
It's a
so
life that's not.
this goes back to several years ago, there was a class that I had class in my house, and I still remember this conversation from then, and it comes up for me a lot. So, if we are born with an innate longing, or Tiferet is representative of an innate longing to envision something higher, if this is what humans are capable of, and in fact meant to be, what is it then? We didn't in this room we weren't always aware that realm existed. We have somewhere along the way recognized it and made a choice to pursue it. And this is part of our lives, is to strive towards that, to fulfill that to whatever degree and we're able to. Where does the genesis is there in everyone. What is it that makes some people try to actualize it and others not? And are we sure that if you don't, it doesn't mean that you're, I know a lot of people, my mom, who never did this, and she was content. She was content because she used to tell me, you would be so much happier if you would just stop thinking so much. And, and it's kind of true. I mean, it'd be easier, certainly, I think.
Wouldn't that,
So-
I think you would.
Well, no, I wouldn't but I mean, and I was doing that from the time, I mean, she was telling me this when I was pretty little.
I hear it.
So what, all the choices that we have and the free will, what do you think it is that makes some people step into it and others shy away and or never know it's there, never care, perfectly happy, and look at us like, you know, just so much happier if you just live like I do. What you see is what you get, you know?
That's true.
So,
It- Marcia, it is, that is an excellent, beautiful question.
Are you gonna answer
You-
it?
No, it is
It would
a
take
very,
longer to
very
try.
good question. Initially, my first response to that would be, is that the innate, natural longing for higher things, for transcendence, is very much present in those people that we might think are not transcendent at all. That if you would take a look at people's lives who know nothing about Kabbalah, who know nothing about the Tiferet chart, who care nothing about God, you will still see, if we put on Tiferet glasses, we will be able to detect in unconventional ways this longing for transcendence in people that don't even know what the word transcendence means. It will be made, it is there. It is there. It is there in different forms. It is there in different forms. That's number one. So what we might, the differentiation that we might be making between people that are spiritually inclined and people that are absolutely living their life on the level of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die.
I know those people.
Right? Two contrasting, antithetical ways of living. Living spiritually,
Yes.
living eat, drink, and be merry, and I could care less about all other things. The mystics will insist, and I agree with them, that these people are more transcendent than you think. That's number one. Number two, but yet we see a disparaging, some people are naturally inclined towards spirituality, are like magnetically moving towards that, and some are just attracted to the other, the material to jewelry.
To the, you know.
So that would be like asking me, what is it within Beethoven or Tchaikovsky that granted them this crazy
Mozart.
ability to create music when you're especially when you're to create music when you're deaf. So you're asking why is there a Beethoven when I can hardly sing a tune? You're asking in the same vein, why is there a Moses who is able to envision panim el panim, face to face,
Yes.
infinity, when little old me is still grappling with the postulations of a belief in God? Or how can there be a Moses while I'm chiseling away at the golden calf? Why is there an Einstein when I have trouble with my multiplication table? So Marcia, I don't know. I don't know what, but the mystics are insisting there is a bare minimum of soul and divine image, a bare minimum in all of us.
Right.
Because we wouldn't be able to be born without it.
Hey, I like what Einstein said about that, okay? Anyone involved in
Chevra,
becomes convinced that his spirit is manifested a little bigger than
take care of your faucets.
And can I
Take care of
just-
your faucets.
Can I just end with the other thing on my wall, there's always.
For sure.
on my wall. It says, I know I was put here on this earth to accomplish a certain number of things. The good news is, at the rate I'm going, I'm gonna live forever.
No, it didn't before.
I don't think so, though.
No, sorry, I don't want to. You don't want it, and I lost it.
And then I do it. I do.
Are you finished? Did we say goodbye?
Okay, just as a quick reminder, we are meeting we now